Welcome to Arkrek's Temple of Ages, the InBetween Show, Episode 1. Hello again, everybody. Hi, everybody. I love this meme so much I made a few years ago because it just seems to get better and better as each day goes by. And I just want to talk really quick about the intro slide right here between choosing the good or the bad path, and that's kind of what this series is about. And that I made this other meme right here because I just find it funny that I was working on a series that was in a series, and I'm starting a new series on top of that to explore even more things, and it's just kind of funny how that keeps working. And it's like, hey James, why don't you finish your old series? And the plan is to go back and return to those things once things are a bit more stabilized and that there's some more opportune things to do right now with my time, and that it'll kind of probably lead back in on itself. And that, honestly, I've talked about most of what I'm going to talk about anyway. And I'm still thinking about some of the bigger picture stuff I want to talk about and kind of end the 13 series up with. So, one step at a time. And like I was just saying, looking at time investment, that I want to get to the point where I can really pump out an episode every day if I want to, and that it's not a multi-day ordeal and taking anywhere between, 2 and 5 hours of my time to make some of the longer form presentations, while this one right here took me a little over an hour, and I can kind of get them going a bit faster and keep up with current events instead of just making it purely, head in the cloud kind of thinking. So that's the idea moving forward. So I also want to say, if it's your first time, welcome. And if you're joining us from previous episodes, welcome again. It's always great to see familiar faces. And I hope there's a small group of people that keep watching these over and over and over again. And that if you want clarification on anything, I probably talked about every topic, especially the non-current event related things, in a lot of detail. So if you're curious or want to know more about anything, I can go back and find you timestamps and things like that if you're curious. So just let me know. And there's this really weird thing going on with my life right now that, I'll go and watch a podcast from 5 years ago, or I remember I was listening to my own video a few weeks ago that was from months and months ago, and it just kind of blew me away that so many topics in the video I had been thinking about that very day before that, just over and over and over again, so that it doesn't really seem to matter the time frame between things, that the synchronicities can still kind of bleed through reality in your day-to-day lives. And I've been seeing that more and more and more, to a point that's just, it's still surprising me, which I find surprising, amongst all this chaos and the events of 2026 and where this all seems to be going. And just balancing trying to warn people about what's coming, but also being too soon. Excuse me, because no one really likes that. They just kind of want you not to rock the boat, and trying to say, oh, look at all this stuff on the horizon, starts rocking most people's boats. And just weirdly enough, that the amount of delays added in on top of this is just so interesting. And that even as it gets faster and faster, it's still delayed, which is just amazing in so many ways, and frustrating. But, it's still getting there nonetheless. And that, especially this year, it's just been one thing after the other. I'm still catching up to it that, we've been talking about so many of these theories and ideas for decades, and now they're finally here and really starting to come to fruition. And, it's a very bittersweet experience. And like I was saying about looking into the past, I was listening to this tonight, the Tim Dillon show from 5 years ago, and it just blew me away how much of what he was talking about resonated with just stuff I was thinking about today, 5 years later. And that he says right here, during the end chimes, where are you going to get your chuckles? How are you going to keep a smile on your face in all of this uncertainty and chaos? And that's a lot about what this channel is and what it'll be about moving forward. So in this episode, I kind of want to go over some previous memes I've had in more detail because I built this meme from the ground up and I keep adding things. And I just added a few more things. So the best way to look at it is the Titanic is our system. And it's run by this AI entity that's around a burning circus tent, which I think sums it up very, very succinctly. And in front of him is Plato's cave. And the AI entity is kind of through the smartphone and the tablets pre-programming everyone in the cave. And that's guiding the ship. Because the AI is an artificial being that needs real human consciousness to get the ship to keep moving. And in front of that is the bucket of crabs that if you try to escape the cave, that our society will just pull you back into your day-to-day mundane tasks and tell you not to think about it. And that you can jump off the ship kind of in the middle right there. There's a dude in a cardboard box and he's mewing, and I'll go into that in a minute. And you can choose the two paths. You can go on the self-sufficient moral side or the evil nuclear submarine full of reptilian people, maybe. Who knows? And I added in front of all the icebergs, because it's not one iceberg, it's just one iceberg after the other, there is a cheese grater. And also the sharks in the water. Then that represents all the chaos and the uncertainty and perils of our time. And just asking ourselves, where do we want to go in this system we find ourselves, and how that relates to our channel, and how I've been talking about how just... Like last night, my dad was watching TV, and he ended up going to sleep, and right after it, the Titanic started playing. So it just... Things like that and how it lines up, it just... More and more, it seems harder to ignore. And also why I'm moving forward and doing these things and trying to consult about it and bring people together. So I love this meme right here because I love asking everybody, why are you here? And what are we going to do moving forward? Because many hands make light work, and I'm ready to build some alternatives from whatever the heck is going on right now. Because it doesn't seem to be very great, and I have all these amazing ideas of where we can go instead. It's just going to take more than myself to do it, is my guess. And that more and more as we find ourselves in the middle of the human condition, that it'd be nice to have some space or a bubble and not have to face us all head on all the time. Because the human condition is very weird. Like in our state, for example, the guy that died from a horse. And in the army, you have all these furries and people dressing up as anthropomorphic beings that... And the leaders of our society. And if you haven't seen this movie, The Society, it's really good. It's about shape-shifting vampire people that feed on the poor, literally. And when they do that, they can shape-shift. And the main character, everybody in his life is gaslighting him. From his family, his friends, his therapist. And he eventually figures it out. And I just love it because he's literally a butt face right here. And it just reminds me so much of the leadership of our society. And that if you find yourself in a situation like that, it might be good to start exploring and at least discussing the alternatives rather than staying on the burning circus tent Titanic run by a bunch of buttheads. And that's what led me to make this meme right here. And I kind of want to go over the history of this meme right here because it's had so many iterations. It originally started out as this dude stuck in a box. And I wanted to improve the feeling of it, so I added the mewing face because of all the connotations that I'll go over here in a minute about it. And that this kind of started around viewership count. That I noticed that my viewership count on this channel and the amount of subscribers and things like that seemed to be artificial and being kept in a box. So I originally made this meme that I could break out of that box that I was being kept in and hopefully flourish. And in one of the most meme-filled shows ever made, SpongeBob, there's this episode where the squid right here buys a TV and he throws out the box, and his friends are in the box using their imagination to go on adventures. And how their imagination can come to life, so it seems. Yet when he looks in the box, it doesn't seem like anything is happening, yet in their minds, all this magic is happening. And I'm relating that to mewing because this is a meme that's been in our mainstream society more and more lately. And it's about, your face changing and the proportions of it and making it more comedic as it goes. And the interesting thing is this is called looks-maxing as well, and is a huge part of the younger generation right now, that they're all trying to have this certain look on their face and have this certain attitude. And this is happening in Hollywood. They're getting these facial fat removals from their face. And a lot of people are asking, like, why do they keep doing it? Because it makes them look so ridiculous and goofy, and some would say ugly. And this is one of the OGs, the Bogdandoffs, that they had all this extreme plastic surgery to the point that people were saying that they were trying to recreate the look of the pharaohs and some of these ancient statues that look all comedic and, with messed up proportions and all that, and that they might be trying to replicate who they see as their bosses. And how that look is in Zoolander, and how it's related to reality controlling powers and manipulation. And then the second movie, it was about the Chosen One journey and prophecy. And much like Star Wars and Luke Skywalker, because he can control reality as well. And in this final scene, they're talking about synchronicity, as there's like the Kundalini snake in the background. And, they just keep making these goofy faces in this example, but it gives them control over reality and the ability to distort it. A lot like the Force, or even the Matrix movies with Neo and Trinity being able to fly. And in this scene, they stop a falling object, and that reminded me a lot of the Matrix as well, because Neo can stop bullets. So they were basically directly referencing the Matrix as well, and that he has the fire within him, and that the prophecy was true. He is the chosen one. But it was interesting here because everyone thought that the prophecy was fake and made up, but it turns out this fake made up thing actually came true because of the power of our minds and whatever narrative structure we find ourselves in. And so I translated it to this meme, and breaking out of fear and negativity and this evil system, and using this magic or whatever seems to be going on here, or the powers of our imagination or mass subconscious, to find a better path forward. And just make a funny meme. And I want to talk about memes for a second, because it's kind of documented that in previous presidential elections that intelligence agencies produced memes about the president and this magical frog called Keck. And they've been making them ever since, and it's been a huge part of the internet meme culture ever since. And like I said, how that's related to intelligence agencies and them purposefully tapping into the mass subconscious of humanity through these images and symbols to lead it to where they want reality to go. And how they're trying to spy and watch everybody so that they can subtly adjust the path of the ship we find ourselves on, or our society. So I thought to myself, why don't I make my own memes? Especially memes about overcoming fear, imagination coming to life, and making our own amazing adventure that brings a smile to your face and is really goofy and comedic. So I wanted to bring this to Invincible, which is one of the biggest pre-programmings in the Western culture right now. And how this showed up in my life yesterday, that this is on the official channel for the show, promoting it. And they had this joke about mewing and all of this. So it just surprises me how much it reverberates in my own life, and also the mass subconscious, and how this meme is also being propagated to the masses, and especially the youth right now. Like, you wouldn't believe. This is one of the biggest ones. And that this show is related to breaking the fourth wall, and them being aware that they are in a show, and that they're talking to the audience about production times, and that the characters in the show are aware that they're talking to interdimensional beings about the production time of their own reality and the show that they're in. And I had this meme in the beginning of my last presentation when you look up and see that you're trapped inside of a meme, and here's another meme of that character talking to the person on the other side of the fourth wall and that they can see them. So, it just keeps going up and down fractally, and how I related that to Loki and your higher and lower self and choosing the story of reality. And how in the Deadpool movie, he's inside Loki's mind and that story structure, but he saves his own timeline. And his timeline is way more goofy and ridiculous than most of the other timelines. But, if you look at our own timeline, you might see that we have a very serious or not so serious timeline, and how that branches into the very fabric of time and space and the story of reality itself, and how we have an ability to change that and become self-aware of it and change it. And I made this meme: it's good to be served tea, yet what if you are the tea that's being served? That you're on the stage, you're the actor that has to act out this craziness, that it's not as great as watching the movie. That if you're in the Terminator movie, it would be a huge dampener, I would say. So I want to get to our movie, what's going on in our day-to-day life in this movie. So I want to go back to the Strait of Hormuz, because I think this is really going to be the straw on the camel's back for this next phase we're going into, and this transition between this life and dream we're a part of now and this kind of crazy technological future and even past that. So one of the things I really wanted to focus on past the energy was that a lot of the world's internet traffic goes through the cables in the Strait of Hormuz. And that these Middle Eastern countries actually have a lot of server data structure there that have to relate to like financial institutions and just the internet as a whole. And that these can be targeted and can't be repaired really if this conflict is going. And that roughly 30% of the world's crude oil and 20% of the natural gas energy and 50% of the world's fertilizer supply goes through this strait. And right now, since we've pissed off Iran and they're in control of the strait, we are cut off from this 30, 20, and 50% of these resources. And that is why our gas prices are going up and inflation is going to keep going. And I don't have a slide for it here, but since the beginning of this year, we've lost about 20% of our buying power, 15 to 20%. And if you calculate that since January, that means we're literally gaining a percentage of inflation, or between 1 and 2% inflation every week on living costs. And my father was saying he has this retirement plan where he gets a 3% increase in living costs every year. And it just blew my mind that in 2.5 weeks this year, inflation surpassed his 3% living cost increase every year in 2.5 weeks. And if we blow up the strait, that's going to increase to 3 or 4% or even more. It'll start out as 3 or 4%, but just every week. It's crazy. And that's what we've had so far, provably, that 1 to 2%. So, this all started about 5 weeks ago when we blew up their leader and much of their leadership. We blew up a school, a girls' school, and they waited till the paramedics got there, and then they blew it up again. And a lot of these children were related to people of power in Iran. And we've just been knocking off their leadership like crazy ever since, just, trying to cut the head off the Hydra. And a few days ago, during a peace talk, we blew up their tallest bridge. And then we did the same thing where we waited for people to show up, and then we bombed it again, allegedly. It's really hard to tell who's telling the truth here, because everyone's trying to lie and spread propaganda. So, you really have to just kind of watch the videos and see what's going on. But even that could be fake, so who knows? Just a caveat. But just that mainstream opinion that we're demanding that we take over and they retreat. And they're demanding that we retreat, apologize, and pay them back for all the sanctions and blockades for the last 40 years of their home country and blowing up all their people in an illegal war that we can't even really justify publicly. You know, it's just the ravings of a crazy orange Cheeto man is basically the mainstream, you know, thing here. And that there are 31 provinces in Iran. And after we killed their head commander, their Ayatollah, that each one of these sections has their own independent commanders. And they will not stop until all of the terms and conditions that were set before their leader was blown up are met. So we have to pay them a lot of money. We have to back off. Israel has to back off. And we have to sing Kumbaya and kiss their feet. And I don't think that's happening. And that based upon this, what I was saying with the 31 provinces, there's no head of the Hydra to cut off. It's just a whole bunch of independent heads, all with the same objective, and that's to bring the world to its knees and bleed it out through energy crises and oil costs that they now control. And that they have all these underground tunnels that we can't really get to, just filled to the gills with missiles. That's what they say anyway. And they've been releasing all these propaganda videos about how evil we are. So we're being isolated in the world community, and that if we go there, it's going to be a meat grinder. If we set feet on the ground, they're going to blow up. In retaliation, they're going to blow up all the other facilities in the Middle East, and won't have access to that oil and natural gas. And that countries like Cuba have already gone dark for multiple days because they're having gas shortages. The same with places like Australia. And that right now things aren't so bad because there's these things like the Saudi pipeline that's pumping 7 million barrels per day. But that will be blown up if we set boots on the ground in Iran, which we're on the precipice of doing. And that's already leading to worldwide famine and food shortages, and multiple countries are already feeling it, and people are saying to stock up if you can. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And I want to further get to our military power in the region and how if we do put boots on the ground, that we're going to lose our entire military presence in the Middle East. And we have 11 nuclear aircraft carriers that we use to maintain our position as world police and the dominant power in the world. And these are our military force multipliers that we can show up to any country, put boots on the ground, have air support, and do our thing, which we've done many, many times since now. Yet the problem is that we currently have 3 carriers in the Strait, and these can't shrug off hypersonic missiles. So we'll lose 3 aircraft carriers if we attack them, all of our military bases, and all the troops we send into the meat grinder. And that this is also hard to tell, but that apparently a lot of our military bases around the Gulf are already incredibly damaged or basically abandoned. And that I think it was like a week and a half ago or so, that there were reports that they tried to send 6 Marine ships to Kuwait, and they were almost instantaneously blown up. Like within the day, they were blown up. And the day after that, we deployed 50,000 troops. I wonder if that was a coincidence. And since then, we've had this incredibly expensive radar plane be shot by a missile. We've had 2 jets shot down. And on the rescue mission to get the pilots of the 2 jets, we had 2 C-130s, the really big ones that were for the special forces, and 2 more helicopters shot down. So this isn't a normal engagement where we can just walk in over everybody. Like, they're actually blowing our stuff out of the sky because they have really new equipment. And that we can't beat them really with conventional tactics because they built all of their tunnels so deep that we can't blow them up, and the country's so mountainous that they just have underground tunnels everywhere. So if we try to invade from basically anywhere, they're just going to pop up out of the tunnels and shoot us with state-of-the-art missile technology that we can't defend against in any kind of volume, and that we're not equipped to defeat. So they have the perfect strategy to just wipe out about a third of our military, and that just opens the door to China and Russia doing whatever they want. Like, so this is the path I see, the paths I see before us. We have the Kumbaya path, where we pull out of the straits, we lick our wounds, we pay attention to America, we start fixing the homeless problem, we stop being the military police, we cut our ties to Israel, we reform our political structure. I see that as the least likely, unfortunately. The next path is that we basically just leave the straits and we don't invade. The problem with that is that we've already lost access to 30% of our crude oil, 20% of our natural gas, and 50% of the fertilizer, with no clear solutions forward. That, no one has said the cap of how high gas prices could go. No one. It could just keep going and going and going. So that's going to add 15 to 20% inflation, and we're already there and paying for it. It's just going to take a few weeks and months to see it. And it's just going to keep getting worse and bleeding us out. And all of the allied nations will disown us so that they can get access to the straits again. And until Israel and the U.S. apologizes, we're never getting access to it ever again, unless we beat them, which in the opinion of many people is that we can't. Almost anyone that actually looks into it basically says we can't. It's basically super Vietnam that prepared 40 years for us, that have state-of-the-art technology. They didn't build aircraft carriers. They built missiles. They didn't build a whole bunch of extra tanks. They built more missiles in places we can't get to, so they'll just keep lobbing missiles at us. And apparently, China and North Korea and Russia are all trying to give them intercontinental capability so that they can return the favor of us bombing them. So, that's food for thought. And the most likely that I would say is that we're going to go boots on the ground. We're going to attack, and in response, Iran's going to level oil production facilities. They're going to attack the Saudi pipeline. And even if the fighting stopped, it would take years to repair that damage. And as long as the war is going on, we won't be able to build anything new, because you can't build anything new if you're getting missiles launched at you. And they've said they're just warming up with the missile supply, that they can do this for, a decade or more, and that they can be shooting more than they're shooting already. And they're matching the missiles being shot at them. So, they have so many missiles. And which will send us into a global energy crisis and shortage, combined with a global food shortage, the likes of which we've never seen. And inflation is going to become crazy. And I say that because, in this AI video right here, I think these people serve evil itself. So that, of course, that's the path they're going to pick. They might delay it, they might sidestep it, but eventually the path they're going to pick is the most brutal, the one that'll make them the most money and give them the most control and lead us further towards this robotic AI demon system that seems to be ahead of us. So I want to talk about buying power really quick here, because I've been talking about inflation percentages, and I know that the numbers on here might not be perfect, because you might say, hey, 100% of $5 isn't $10, but that's 100% inflation. And I might tweak this later, but I think you get the gist here. That in about 2020, before the lockdown, if you had $5, that's how far it went. And then at 100%, that it now costs $10 to buy what that $5 used to buy. And right now, we're between about 100 and 200%. We're between that $10 and $15 mark. We're pretty much leaving the $10 100% inflation, and the 200% is basically guaranteed now that we're cut off from the Strait of Hormuz. And if we bomb the strait and put boots on the ground, we're going to move into the 300 and 400 range within the next few months rather quickly. And it could go past that, even that, so that we're looking at Now it costs $25 to get what you used to get for $5 in a pretty rapid order. On top of there just literally being no gas. Like, even if you had that $25, that when you went to the pump, there's no gas there because the supply chain broke, and the whole supply chain, especially in America, needs gas. Because holy crap is our country huge. And we're in the middle of a record heat wave across the country. And I just found this today, they're calling it the Super El Nino. Super rare, once-in-a-century phenomenon that could heat the ocean by 2 degrees. And I don't have a slide for it here, but that can turn the phytoplankton and plankton in the sea red, which turns them poisonous, which is biblical. The Red Sea, that a third of all the life in the ocean died from the Red Sea, that's plankton from too much sunlight because it gets too hot. And that Colorado, I just learned this today, had the worst snowpack ever. That normally they get about 80%, and 60% is like they start declaring emergencies. They got like 25% snowpack, or even less in some areas. They don't know what they're going to do. I might not got those numbers perfect, but it's pretty close to those percentages. And all the farming, the water availability. I'm in Pacific Northwest Washington, so water is one of the fewer things we have to worry about here. But if you're in a place like Colorado or the desert or Texas, I mean, that's going to be one of the big problems moving forward, is water security. So you keep saying, James, you keep bringing the mood down, and you keep spelling doom out. The sky is falling. All right, what are we gonna do about it? The first steps, just as my life an example, I've basically sunk half of all my remaining funds into this battery and some solar panels, because this will be worth its weight in gold. And I got it on sale, and I don't think it's ever going to get cheaper than this. And that if the worst would happen, if the supply chain does break, if, the power companies fail, I still have my standard of living. And I'm going to change some appliances around so I can feel pretty much everything I need to do off this battery right here. And that even in the summer, I could still use some air conditioning. That it has a big enough storage in it that I could keep my life going and my standard of living. And that's the solution to every negative or disaster you might see. That the first thing you're always going to want is food. And then you're going to want electricity and security and housing and shelter. And I've been talking to my parents about this, and that I kind of want to add a quick thing about this, that the money I used for this had been under lock and key pretty much, and I had to convince somebody that has been fighting me tooth and nail and not wanting to hear any of this that I've been trying to talk about for almost a decade, finally has been changing their mind and letting me use these funds, because I don't see any other way around this stuff. Like, it just seems to be the plan and the path forward. And they don't want to agree with it, but they're at least letting me choose the way I want to go forward, because whether or not any of this disastrous stuff is going to happen moving forward, just the inflation we're already feeling from the toll of the Strait of Hormuz is going to make this 20% more expensive in the next couple months. So if it was on sale and it's going to increase that amount anyway, that if you have things like this, that they pay for themselves. And that if you look at buying power, like I was just talking about, that if way back when I talked to this person about preparing, about 2019, they could have bought $200 worth of supplies. Those same supplies now would cost $400 or more if they're even around, and then they're all going to be shittier quality, in my opinion, for the most part. And in 3 months, they could be $600 or more, and it just exponentially goes up. And we're not even out of the year with this. We're just talking about the year half done. And that one of the big parts of this moving forward, and I don't think I said it earlier, but I'm willing to consult on any of this. So if you want to know more about this or have it applied to your own life for basically free right now, actually free right now, if you're online and having this, I'll start consulting with you for free right now. Just leave a message, send me a private message, and we can go from there. That you have your money in the bank or in physical cash, but you can't eat that. And if you turn it into physical investments, that those can't be taxed. Those can't be inflated. That if you go buy a year's worth of food, that if the oil prices go up, it doesn't matter because you already have the food purchased in a room. It doesn't matter if the lights go out or if the bank's not open or if there's no groceries at the grocery store because you already have it. You've already invested in physical things. And that, like I was saying, with the prices of everything increasing, that if you can buy shelf-stable things or even a year's or two worth of food right now, that in 6 months, all that food that you bought right now might be almost double the price. Maybe not that much, but you get where I'm going with this, that increasingly it's going to be harder to find these items and they're going to be increasingly expensive. So if you get them right now and you diversify them into what you actually need and want and what other people need and want, then they are gaining interest. Because if you just have the money sitting there right now, since this year, that stack of money is worth 20% less than it was at the beginning of this year, for the most part. And that if you had a stack of stuff like this, it's now worth twice what it was. So your investment of that original $200 is now doubled. So if you can get ahead of the curve, your physical investments start gaining more wealth, while the liquidity currency and digital currency loses value to inflation day by day. So like I said, if you want to know more, if you want to prepare against all this and the sky falling and literally every disaster ever in the same way for the most part, let me know. I've been studying this for years and years and been a part of preparedness groups, and it's my passion. So I kind of wanted to have a head in the clouds part. That was the feet on the ground part. Now it's time for head in the clouds, because that's what the InBetween series is about. That we're in between the old and the new system. We're in between the clouds and the ground. Yeah. So in the tune right here, this recent AI video shows the powers of our world, quote unquote, talking with evil personified. And I realized that I've been noticing this especially the last 2 weeks, that I was talking about this Invincible show, that it's the biggest cartoon show in the Western Hemisphere right now, especially for pre-programming. And the last episode that was 2 weeks ago has to do with Satan gaining his power back. And they're talking about how Satan's not evil and, you don't understand the full story. But I just find it so interesting that this happened, that the biggest show in Japan or in the Eastern world just revealed that the evil of their world looks like a devil, and they just showed his face and all this happened within a week of each other. So the AI Iran video, the biggest comic book in the West, the biggest comic book in the East, are all showing this pre-programming of evil awakening as also good awakens. So it's this weird split. Or I would like to say, if they're showing evil awakening, then the good is awakening as well. And relating that to like The Mask from Jim Carrey, because it was this transcendental spirit that gave him these superpowers to fight against his evil system and write a better story of reality. And how that's related to one of the first videos I've ever made, and would recommend that you go watch that as well. But I also want to say that the mask that Jim Carrey wears, and also think of Jim Carrey like in The Truman Show, is called the Mask of Loki. And the Loki show has his higher and lower self working together to reshape reality and rewrite the script. So I wanted to take that to the show called Evangelion, because along with the whole, Groundhog Day, time travel thing and unifying theory that I was talking about in the last video, a large part of that is linked to this show from Japan called Evangelion that I've talked about many times before. And because it's about this transcendental or transhumanist Gnostic cult that's trying to steer humanity towards what they call the Human Instrumentality Project, where they take these creatures from space One's called Lilith, and they hide it in Antarctica. And it's a part of the system of human consciousness evolution, and that it relates it to the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and the Sephiroth, which is also related to the Loki show right here in the Tree of Life. I don't have the slide here, but the show's heavily related to that and recreating reality, and how everyone's turned into this orange goo. And I don't have a slide here, but it looks like orange Fanta. And there's a meme about orange Fanta that, is this real, or is this a Fanta sea? Like a big sea of orange Fanta. And that's literally what the combined nature of humanity is. And there's all this Christian symbolism during this giant eclipse ritual. And humanity's turned into this giant goo. Like all of their consciousness are put together in this hive mind. And the main character, who is this traumatized kid that was the underdog that no one really believed in, or he was the person you'd least expect, gets to remake the world. And you can see the orange fantasy right there. And he chooses this Adam and Eve storyline. And this was the original movie. And since then, they've made all these remakes of the movie. And it turns out they all have these different timelines. And that it basically becomes the main character going, okay, we did the original story, so now let's start changing all the variables in the story to try to find which one we like best. Like, all right, we tried vanilla ice cream. Let's try the other 31 flavors of Baskin-Robbins. So that's what they start doing. And that reminded me of my video from the topic from the end of my last video I made about how Skynet was going back in time to basically bring himself into power, or bring itself into power, and that every time you went back, it started creating new branched timelines on the Tree of Life, so to speak, and that those could lead to good or bad outcomes, and that it becomes this cat and mouse game of who's creating the new story of reality, if it's good or evil. And how that's also related to the Lego movie, because they combined all the archetypes of all these different time machines, like the DeLorean and the time booth from Bill and Ted and the Skynet Terminator time machine, and you put them all together, and you can recreate time and reality itself to the storyline you want it to be, and how it's related to that, and time travel and energy and portals and stargates and consciousness and plasma, and I can go on from there. But what do we do with all this? And there's this one music video that combines this Evangelion universe with Tenacious D's Pick of Destiny, which is about good and evil, and this green pick that can bring your dreams to life and basically give you superpowers and things like that, and its relationship with evil, and if evil has control of that pick of destiny to recreate reality or not. And that at the very end of this video, they make these implications that the main character from the Evangelion universe, who's recreating his own realities, is in the mind of the Tenacious D characters, Jack Black, and that he realizes he's in a cartoon, while it zooms out and shows Jack Black and, the Tenacious D actors 20 years later. And then it, that zooms out and it shows they're in a card game that relates it to the tarot card deck and their themes of reality, and it zooms out and there's the creator of the Japanese comic book getting a tattoo of the Pick of Destiny on his arm, and then that zooms out even further, and then it's a giant robot playing a song in space, and then that zooms out, and it turns out they were all in a song being played on a stage as the director winks to the audience. And that you're in a universe right now, a single verse of a song. And like the marbles at the end of the Men in Black movie, that the universe is, in this fractal pattern, as above, so below. And we find ourselves looking at the corners of our own reality, and as it breaks down, the veil's lifting so we can see what's actually happening here, and the story we're all going to create moving forward, and how we're going to deal with this weird evil as the two become one, and this weird serious and not so serious storyline and experience we all find ourselves in right now. And so I want to leave it there. And wherever you are, night or day, I want to say thank you for joining us on this weird journey. And if you made it through that, ooh-wee. And I hope you'll join us next time. And that I'm going to continue working forward. And I plan on creating a business that's basically based around consulting people of current events and moving forward with preparedness to basically preserve the light of humanity and consciousness and intelligence in the storm of chaos. And that if you're prepared enough, the sky could be falling, but you care more about that it's Taco Tuesday and that you're going to go hang out with your friends because they were all so knowledgeable, prepared enough, and aware of what was happening that they could sidestep all that chaos and craziness and build something much better that the goodness of the universe and experience and beyond itself can look at and be a part of in this sea of craziness and tell one of the best stories I think we've ever seen that even put something like Lord of the Rings, I don't want to say to shame, but my goodness, there's so much more going on here than that. And that might not be everyone's thing. And that's why I think in that Bible verse that during Revelation that they're all around the seat of the throne of God and they're asking God like how long is this going to take? Like, this is crazy. It's like, you have to shorten the days or no flesh will be left. And that those people up there, didn't want to be on the stage anymore. And for whatever reason, I seem to want to be here to create something amazing on this stage of life. And I'm finding others that want to as well and not just peace out quietly into the good night of everything. Kind of hard to put words on that one, but thanks for joining us. Till next time, I hope it's soon. And wherever you are, peace.